I went to the Charger game last night. It's not a humble brag. It's, you guys know I'm a Charger fan, and I'm like, there's two football teams on earth, two sports teams on earth I truly care about, like that I've kind of become fans of. Been a Charger fan since mid-'90s, early 90s. And then, of course, Oklahoma State, where I went to school. The Cowboys got things rolling a little bit, dominated Cincinnati, take on Oklahoma for the last time in a while, as Ollie Gordon with over 250 yards rushing again. Kind of amazing. Anyway, I look at this thing, and the Chargers, I know they've had some terrible seasons, and they've had some, at least recently, some good seasons. Right? Last year, they did make the playoffs. Lost after being up, what was it, 20-something, nothing? Just, you don't have to point out it's 27-0. I knew how much it was, but then it just felt worse every time you say it. To the Jaguars. Like, I literally, that game, Jay Stu, I was coaching at the OGP Open Gym Premiere in Anaheim, and we had games, and we're in between games, we're watching the first half, and it's 27-0 in the start of the second half. And we go back out to play a game, and the kids are playing, and we win, and I walk outside, and they're like, "Can you believe that?" I'm like, "Ah, that was a fun game." Like, no, the Charger game is like, "Oh, I can't believe how much they lost." Like, what? But all Charger seasons feel the same, don't they? They feel like, man, we're pretty good, and I'm saying that's what they would say. We're pretty good, and for whatever reason, a lot of times it's been injuries, sometimes coaching decisions, bad luck or whatever, that they don't achieve better than their talent. They don't achieve better than their talent. The Dallas Cowboys, it feels like there's always a lot of hype, and then, really, really big games, I don't want to say if they choke, but they're not as good as advertised, and they get a lot of attention because they're the Cowboys. The Steelers, it feels like 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They're going to be dynamic on defense, and then, offensively, obviously they're not as good as they were with Big Ben, but the defense was always kind of the standard, was always kind of how they played. If you could figure out their defense, you could beat them. If you couldn't, Ravens kind of much the same, although obviously different with Lamar in terms of his explosiveness. They just always felt like they found ways to keep things close, always had a very good defense, always good in special teams, and obviously great at kicker since they've had Justin Tucker. I'm not, and again, I understand that I'm talking kind of recent history, but the truth is, like, there's a level of expectation you have with some of these teams and what they're going to look like. The Bengals have kind of reached that here recently as well, haven't they? Let's get off to a pathetically slow start where you start to question, are they any good? And then all of a sudden they close strong. Yesterday they go into San Francisco, get up 24-10, right? Christian McCaffrey catches the touchdown passes 24-17, but then they run it in. They go for a game-winning touchdown with, I think it was under 3 minutes to go. And the Bengals go into San Francisco and get a win. You're like, the Bengals, well, they're not that bad. Right? They're 4-3, and the year they went to the Super Bowl, they were bad to start the season, and they closed strong. I would make the same case for the Seahawks with or without Russell Wilson. Right, Beyer, you could attest to this because, as we pointed out, and you've had a lot of Twitter love over what you're talking about with the Seahawks and the throwbacks, it wasn't just the uniforms, it was the nostalgia of back in the 80s and 90s with the Seahawks playing back in the Kingdom. It's just a different feel. But Seahawks games, for whatever reason, it always feels like it comes down to like the last couple plays and the quarterback, right? Like them coming from behind and winning that game. That's like, how many Russell Wilson games were like that? And Geno won some last year like it, and Russell won them for like 10 years like that.
Yeah, it's Pete Carroll's recipe, it seems.
Yeah, just kind of keep it close, kind of low scoring, and just hang around. And, oh, man, the Seahawks won again. How'd they win that game? They weren't that good, but they weren't bad either. But the Bengals have picked up kind of that same sort of mantra where they're slow starters and fast finishers. Some teams are fast finishers and slow finishers and fast starters. That's what we got with the Niners, right? The Niners look like they could beat the 85 Bears for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And I'll grant you, it's injuries. You don't have Debo. You don't have Trent Williams. You're not going to look the same. But there is something there. There is something there that tells you, man, this looks and feels a little bit different, doesn't it? The Bengals are they back? The Eagles have taken this on as well. Now, the Eagles last year would get up early and thoroughly dominate you. And I've seen even questions say, are the Eagles, they have the best record in the league, or they're really the best team in the league? Like, I don't know, but they keep winning damn games. You know, Jalen Hurts on a bad knee, but he still finds a way to make plays at the end of a game. I love the fact that the tush push didn't work, but then they ran a little counter to it, which no one had seen before, and that thing worked. But it's interesting that here we are in a league which prides itself on its parity, on the old adage that we know to be true, which is half the teams that make the playoffs last year won't make the playoffs this year. And yet teams kind of feel the same year to year. Granted, the Rams have fallen off a cliff because of the lack of talent, right? That happens. And there are other teams which can go up and down. I mean, Jacksonville was bad for so long, and 2 years ago they were terrible under Urban Meyer. But you could kind of see this thing coming, even going back to last year after they won that Charger game. Like, they had some talent, and Trevor Lawrence is, in fact, a dude. The Chiefs, right? Like, no one's freaking out about the Chiefs losing yesterday because this is kind of how they've been for the last 2 years or so, isn't it? I call it playing with their food, where they just allow teams that they seem to know they're better than outplay them, and then Mahomes kind of pulls the rabbit out of his backside, and suddenly they're awesome and they're in an AFC championship or a Super Bowl again. Now, I said this to start the year. I think this is probably the least talented offense around Mahomes he's ever had in terms of skill position players. But that loss yesterday doesn't change anything about how anybody feels about the Chiefs, does it? Does it? Does anybody? I'm watching the Bengals yesterday, and I thought to myself, they're going to end up in the AFC Championship game again. They're going to end up deep in the playoffs again. Burrow is hurt to start the year. They're kind of dysfunctional. They're not playing well. And then they just kind of figure it out, put it together. Granted, I remember this is the Bengals that there was a stretch after the 5 consecutive years of being in the playoffs that they were awful. But this regime of the Bengals, since they've had Joe Burrow back from the knee injury after his rookie year, this is how they've been. Slow starters, fast finishers. Here's Burrow after the game.
You know, really, that was athleticism, acceleration, explosiveness was really a big focus of mine in the offseason. I just haven't really been able to show that too much, so it was nice to have that hard work pay off. Yeah, I was able to put the ball in for the most part all day in the right spot. In the spot that I was trying to, and that's what I expect out of myself. You know, my footwork I think a lot about and my mechanics, and so when I'm not that, it's disappointing, and so this is my standard. I think my mechanics have cleaned up over the last couple of weeks, and then also, you know, with my calf feeling better, I feel more comfortable extending plays instead of, you know, maybe throwing the ball away in those same situations that I had in the first couple weeks, and so I think it's a combination of a couple things.
Here's Dak Prescott after the Cowboys. They kicked the Ramos. You okay after that? They kicked the hell out of the Rams. Holy cow!
Trust me, the guys in the locker room, myself, we know what this game means. We're not going to compare this to 2 weeks ago. Obviously, yeah, we learned a lot about that, but not to say, in a sense, that's apples and oranges. You know what I mean? Like it's a big game. Don't for a second, even want to compare that. To be honest with you, and I know the men that we have. I know how we're going to prepare. I know how we're going to approach the week. And, yeah, it's a matchup we're looking forward to. I can promise you that in Philly.
Jerry did say he didn't want to talk about the Eagles because he's learned his lesson. So
he didn't want to poke the bear.
He didn't want to poke the bear is what he said.
Pour honey on me. I always say that, you know. You see me and a bear in a fight, pour honey on me. So he can poke it. It's part of it. It's part of the National Football League. Whether we talk or not, we know what's ahead of us.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really smart point. Right? Like, does anybody think the Eagles are going to want to win this game more, or the Cowboys are going to want to win this game more if Dak Prescott talks trash about the Eagles, or vice versa? Like, Byron, you played football. Do you think that? Mike?
No, not at all.
Why is it that so many in our position believe that? Or maybe they don't believe it. Maybe they act like they believe it.
Especially for big games, like this was already going to be on their radar. I don't know why people feel that is the case. Because 2 minutes in, it doesn't matter anymore. You know, maybe there's...
It only matters is at the end of the game if you lost, right? If you lost, then they're like, see, shouldn't have talked trash.
Sure.
But it didn't really have anything to do with the fact that you did lose.
Like I could, like if Kansas City, you know, somebody was spotting off, like we're going to make this 17 straight wins over the Broncos, and may get the Broncos' attention, but like the vice versa of it, if the Broncos are talking about the Chiefs and saying like, yeah, we're going to take down Kansas City, maybe Kansas City was looking ahead to that game against the Dolphins in Germany. I didn't hear any of that talk coming from Denver, so maybe that's why the Chiefs just weren't in their sorts yesterday. But yeah, I really don't believe that plays a role in it.
I don't either. I don't either. Not for even 1 second. I don't.